The story of THF Bayzoo reads like the script for a gangster in a Hollywood crime action movie. But make no mistakes, what you're about to see is all reality and no fiction or make-believe. It's a tale of a man who grew up in the streets and possibly did everything and anything that is to be done in the hood. From theft to illegal possession to firearms, drug trafficking, and even getting charged with murder. But as the OG that he is, Bayzoo somehow beat his charge. However, you can only take the boy out of the hood. You can't take the hood out of the homie. And that's what makes him different from all the other rappers. He's not just a splitter dropping bars. Bayzoo knows the streets, and it's all about that life. This is the story of a man who's become the most dangerous man in the rap game. On September 26, 1991, Devontae Collier, aka THF Bayzoo, Zoo or Bebe, was born near the north side of Chicago. He grew up in the infamous Cabrini Green housing complex. Built in 1942, this complex once homed 15,000 people, and it originally had 586 units and 54 buildings. At some point, it was rumored that close to 100,000 people lived in these apartments. Cabrini Green was built to provide inexpensive and safe houses for working-class people in Chicago, but by 1980, it had become one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in all of Chicago. Life in Cabrini Green had deteriorated up to a point that the Chicago Housing Authority didn't even know who lived in the buildings. Therefore, they decided to start demolishing the buildings in 1995, when Bayzoo was just 4 years old. His family was one of the many that were forced to move out of the complex. The young Bayzoo and his family moved to the Woodlawn neighborhood, the place that would shape the rest of his life. Although Bayzoo's parents were present in his life while he was growing up, that didn't stop him from getting involved in the streets from a young age. He and his younger brothers Gutta and Lil Gutta started hustling in the streets even before they were proper teenagers. Bayzoo and his brothers joined the 46 Terror or 46 Woodlawn gang, a set made up of Mickey Cobras and Black Disciples. The gang was named after their hood, 46th Street and Woodlawn Avenue, but the gang changed its name after the death of Gutta in 2011. Gutta, who was only 17 at the time, was with his friends when he accidentally shot himself in the head. He removed the shells from the revolver but put them in his pocket. Gutta then jokingly put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. Unfortunately, one of the bullets remained in the gun and Gutta shot himself, but later pronounced dead at the University of Chicago hospitals. They renamed the group as Gutta Gang after his incident. However, after the death of another member, Johnson Morton, also known as Trigger, the group changed their name to Trigger Happy Family, or THF, in honor of their fallen member. Bayzoo and another gangster named Bruh were the top members of the gang. They both had a reputation as someone no one messes with. But while the gang might be named after one of its members, the term Trigger Happy seems to be applied literally in this sense. The gang is allegedly responsible for dropping a lot of bodies, especially during their beef against the 051 Young Money gang. The beef between THF 46 and 051 Young Money is one that allegedly started even before THF Bayzoo was born. This beef supposedly began back in the 1980s. It got pretty serious again in 2007, and the war would perhaps officially begin in 2008 when he had his first casualty. On September 27, 2008, 18-year-old Zeko was outside a McDonald's parking lot in the 700 block of East 47th Street when he got into an argument with some rival gang members. Zeko was a Mickey Cobra and also a member of the 051 Young Money. Fortunately, after the argument, he was then shot multiple times by THF Aki. Zeko passed away the next day around 10:05 a.m. His death would begin a war that saw both sides suffer multiple casualties. THF Aki was charged with one count on October 9, 2008, but the cops couldn't find him as Aki had already flown the coop, and it wasn't until almost a year later that he was eventually found in Indianapolis. He was extradited to Chicago and he was sentenced to 28 years in prison. 051 wouldn't have their own revenge until April of 2011. Another member of 051 called Montana allegedly shot THF Quint. Shortly before 5 p.m., 17-year-old Quint was walking down to the corner of 46th Street and Cottage Grove Avenue with Rome, who was also a member of THF and Bayzoo. A few minutes later, moving car opened fire on all three of these men and they were all hit. It's the first time Bayzoo would catch a bullet. He was shot in the foot, and Rome was shot in the legs, but but Quint was the unlucky one who suffered fatal injuries. At about 5:45 p.m. on the same day, Quint passed away. Bayzoo recovered from their injuries. On the day of his funeral, 051 Montana would also mock him on Facebook by posting "Rest in Piss." This post is more or less Montana's way of claiming responsibility for the body. Also during this period, Bayzoo and Bruh were the most feared THF members on the streets. While for the 051 gang, their most dangerous member is 051 Melly. But what if I tell you that Bayzoo and Melly always seemed like they were friends?
Man, you don't even drink, man. You're a kid. Stop acting like you really drinking, man.
I'm trying to catch your ass drunk.
Not happening.
I'm trying to catch you drunk.
When I'm drunk, I'm be super prepared, man.
Your ass be out here.
I was drunk. I was just drunk recently.
Your ass be out here loose.
Like a thought.
Hey, I'm ready to catch your ass drunk.
If you didn't know the two men you just saw before watching the video, you would undoubtedly think that they were not just friends, but perhaps best friends. But what if I tell you that these two are the men who are more or less sworn to hate each other, and if they ever come face to face, one, if not both of them, would most likely catch a bullet. These are just two men who have lost several friends to each other. Melly's real name is Yarmel Williams. He was allegedly responsible for dropping the bodies of several THF and OTF members, including Dirk's former manager OTF Chino, who was also a member of THF, OTF Newski, and a host of other bodies. This is why Melly also got the nickname Chirac Gravedigger. 051 Melly and Bayzoo always had mutual respect. Some might even say they admired each other, or perhaps were even friends. This is quite possible because many of these gang members all grew up together as friends on the streets of Chicago, but they became ops by the age of 12 once they joined different gangs. Bayzoo jumped on more than Instagram live sessions together. In one of their sessions, they revealed that they do send each other DMs to each other, and Bayzoo even admitted that he likes Melly.
You nobody to me? Hey, what I tell you in your DM?
Bro, you told me a lot of shit in my deal.
I told you, if something wasn't crying, bitch, I'll spit on you when I'm finished, then All right, then. Stop playing on me, man.
You got the balls to be yourself. That's why I like your bitch ass.
I'll always be myself. I ain't never been a hoe. They don't say that.
You is a hoe.
However, their mutual respect or bizarre friendship didn't stop Melly from being involved in the death of one of Bayzoo's favorite THF members, THF Raheem. His real name was Raheem Damron, and he was one of the casualties of the THF and 051 Young Money War. Raheem was only 15 years old when he was targeted, and he was like a son to Bayzoo. Bayzoo was in a relationship with Raheem's mom during this period. However, when they started dating, Raheem never liked THF Bayzoo, and he didn't accept him. But after some time, they became close, and Raheem saw him as a mentor. Raheem became a member of THF wasn't too long before he started firing at the ops, and in May of 2015, he shot at Melly and 051 Ario. Both men suffered injuries, but they both survived. But this incident would have serious consequences for Raheem. 9 days later, Raheem was heading home from a restaurant with his friends when a car pulled up with 3 people. One of them leaned out and shot Raheem and his friend. His friend would later survive, but THF Raheem sadly passed away shortly. 051 Ario was later arrested for the incident, but various reports claim that it might have been Melly who targeted both teenagers, or that he was present at the shooting. Still, Bayzoo isn't referred to as perhaps the most dangerous man in rap because of his influence or role in the beef against 051 Young Money alone. It's also because of how he beat his murder charge. The song Beat That Body by Bayzoo and King Von sees both rappers talking about beating a case that most people would probably go down for. Not many people beat a charge that several eyewitnesses claim they are guilty of, but that's exactly what happened with Bayzoo. He and perhaps THF's most notorious member, Bruh, are allegedly responsible for the death of 21-year-old Dominic Barnes on the 5th of July 2009. 10:15 a.m., Dominic was in the 4700 block of South Forestville Avenue when Bayzoo and Bruh came down from a gray Chevy Monte Carlo. They both walked up on him and Bayzoo allegedly opened fire. Dominic died on the spot while THF members fled the scene in a vehicle. However, at the time of the incident, no one was arrested. Bayzoo wasn't arrested until late 2014, and now Bayzoo had already started hanging out with OTF, and he was arrested at Lil Durk's southwest suburban Orland Park home. Dirk was also arrested and charged with violations because cops found him with 2 loaded guns. Bayzoo already had an unlawful use of weapon case in January of the same year, so finding him in an area with weapons inky made matters worse for him. And this was perhaps the reason why he was denied bail. Instead, he was kept in the Cook County Jail for 3 years while awaiting trial. Prosecutors did their best to investigate and gather more evidence. During the trial, they claimed that after Bayzoo and Brubra walked up to Dominic, they asked what gang he belonged to, after which they shot and robbed him. However, they were able to get the verdict they wanted because they couldn't provide enough evidence. Bayzoo was eventually released in 2017 because of a lack of enough evidence. However, he was arrested again in April of 2019 for reckless conduct and for having a weapon near a school and park. This time, he was locked up for a few days before he was eventually released on bail. He was arrested again in 2019, and this time for the same murder charge. Prosecutors believe they had found new evidence that would help make the charges stick. But once again, Bayzoo was released in March 2020 as the prosecutors still couldn't find a way to prove that he was guilty of the charges. After he was released this time, Bayzoo took his music more seriously, and it was during this period that he and King Von became quite close and released Beat That Body. Some fans even believe that if Bayzoo had been with Vaughn on that night he was shot, he would still be alive. One fan said, if Zoo was with Vaughn that night, he would still be here. Bayzoo has since stayed out of trouble for a while, and instead focused on dropping new music consistently. But what y'all think? Is Bayzoo really the most dangerous man? Leave your comments below, and if you like what you saw here, check out this video.